Good afternoon. I'm Marianne Wilson, editor of Chain Store Age, and I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Amplifying Your Retail Program Management Program with Data-Driven Survey and Facility Insights. It's being sponsored by Sevan Multi-Site Solutions. Before we start, I just want to make some brief housekeeping points. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to send questions throughout the presentation. It's on the left side of your screen, down below the presenter headshots. We'll field as many questions as we can at the end of the formal presentation. But if we don't have time to answer all of the questions, our sponsor will follow up by email after the session concludes. Also, you can use the section down here on the left. If you have any technical questions about the webinar itself, you'll get a direct reply from our webinar producer. Finally, if you want to review this webinar later or share it with colleagues, a replay will be available on the Chain Store Age site within 2 hours of our conclusion today, and it will remain available there for several months. Okay, that does it for the housekeeping. Let's get on with today's webinar. And for that, I'm going to turn things over to Tommy Hitchcock, Director of Business Development for Sevan Multi-Site Solutions. Tommy?
Thank you, Marianne, and welcome to the webinar, everyone. We hope this will be a productive hour. I'm going to hand it off to Damien just for a second to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Damen Krebsbach. I'm the Operations Director for the Survey and Facility Assessment team here at Sevan Multi-Site Solutions.
Michael?
And I am Michael Simone. I am an Operations Director here at Sevan with over 20 years of commercial experience.
Thank you, guys. I want to give you just a brief overview of who Sevan Multi-Sites is. Sevan is proud to partner with a large number of national brands. Those relationships are based on successful program execution. As an expert and global leader in retail program management, our goal is to become an extension of your team, creating speed and scale to your next retail program. At its core, program management is an art. It's the art of optimizing change. Our integrated solution, as you can see here on the wheel, is to provide a single point of contact, a true turnkey path to your next initiative. While we offer a variety of solutions, as you can see on the wheel, today is about surveys and assessments, site assessments, and that's what will be our focus today. Sevan has executed over 84,000 refreshes and retails, combined with 1.5 billion square feet of sites surveyed. And we can say unequivocally that surveys are a key part of the success of those programs. That'll be the focus for us today, and we will jump to the agenda real quick just to highlight what the guys will be covering as we go through this afternoon's discussion. The power of quality data, confidently getting information from a site survey and then using it on your current and future projects and to help make them efficient. How to understand and leverage that data to optimize your programs. How to tackle important decisions with the right site data. And I emphasize that one because the key is the word right. Taking information that is a true picture of what's in the field and helping guide you through your programs. Lastly, the most exciting for me, a look ahead. What does the future hold for site surveys and the new technology and trends that are hitting the retail industry? Our team will review these things, and we hope to give you some new insights as to what's going on in the world of surveys. Over to you, Michael.
All right, thanks, Tommy. So to kick things off, we're going to start with what is quality data? So when we talk about the quality of data from a survey perspective and design and construction document lens, the most important thing when we talk about that is collecting comprehensive measurements, data points necessary to empower the architects, the engineers, and your design teams with the information they need to put accurate plans, layouts, and CDs together for the execution teams. This is going to include things like the location of columns or fixtures, utilities within the facility, understanding elevations, what's included in part of each and every facet of the building in order for the teams to confidently put a plan of action together for the deliverable for the project that you're looking to achieve at your specific retail location or your facility. Low quality data. This is something that we risk on every project, not putting in the time or the investment up front. When we talk about poor quality information, this is going to lead to architects, engineers, designers. They're all going to be putting together plans based on bad information that consequently is going to lead to bad planning or flawed plans for execution. That will impact the budgets, the costs that everybody sees from a client perspective. This is going to lead to change orders in the field. It will also impact materials. Things will ultimately need to get scrapped and maybe refabricated or rebuilt based on bad measurements or bad information or just bad decisions that were made based on low quality data. And obviously, this leads to dissatisfaction from a client perspective. Nobody likes change orders. Nobody likes changing the plan. And we obviously don't want to run into situations where customers are upset because folks were not meeting expectations. There is a lot of pressure on the industry from a design, pre-construction, and execution perspective to make sure that the data that is collected and consequently the plans that are built are as accurate as possible. So the better the information is up front, the better plan can be put together, and the better everybody can meet those expectations across the board. We're talking about quality data, right? The inverse of that. This is going to help put together accurate plans with the teams, with the vendors, with the suppliers, everybody that's involved with the project from start to finish throughout the entire life cycle. This is going to enable the teams to make decisions and put plans in place that are going to mitigate and reduce the amount of errors and consequently the costs that you see via change orders. This is a critical component, I would say, from a project management perspective, trying to make sure we stay as close to the plan as possible from the get-go. Right? Also avoids the need or the option of having the field verify. Field verify basically is kicking the can down the road and saying, we're going to figure that out later. And that can work in some instances, but more often than not, that might lead to some unforeseen conditions. It might lead to some shortened timeframes that consequently have higher costs, and it might lead to duplication of efforts and the team having to go back and redesign a plan or an execution strategy based on what was discovered in the field. It's better to measure early than measure late. And also here with the better quality data up front, that is going to consequently turn around and impact customer satisfaction. If we know what's already there at the start of the program, we can put a plan in place, we can meet expectations, and obviously we can make sure the client and the customer are happy and satisfied with the final deliverable. So with that, I'll kick it over to Damien to continue.
Thanks, Michael. So besides all the data that Michael was talking about and all the reasons why it's important, through years of working in this industry, we found that for all types of clients or partners, there are some misconceptions about surveying or facility conditions assessments. One of them, probably the most prevalent in my opinion, is around scope complexity. There is certainly a bias out there that architects of record or the design planning team are the only ones that know exactly what they need to do to complete the work, and they're the only ones that know what they need to be successful. I would say, like, to counter that, that most facility condition assessment teams are comprised mostly of degreed engineers, structural engineers, civil engineers, et cetera, or construction managers. So wide ranges of experience there over all types of surveys and all types of settings. It does give them context on what a design team needs to be successful and also the capabilities to collect that data. Beyond that, there's really easy measures such as kickoff calls or calibration calls during the progress of the program that can mitigate the bias there, but also mitigate the risk that you don't need to go back and get information or information was missed, et cetera. It really requires the program management team and the client team to collaborate with the design team and the facility condition assessment team to make sure every piece of data is being gathered that needs to be to make the refresh or the site condition assessment success. Another one that we hear commonly is about stagnant data. That the surveyor, the facility condition assessment is pretty much useless as soon as the surveyor leaves the site. And that's true. A survey or facility condition assessment is truly a snapshot in time. And you might think that there's no way to fill the gaps between survey 1 and survey 2. The goal is to make data continuous and not discrete and give you a constantly evolving and dynamic picture of your assets so that you can continue to make informed decisions. And we're going to talk more about how you can do that later in the technology portion of the presentation. There's also the redundant data. Many clients that we've worked with have said some variants of the phrase, we already have existing condition drawings, we already have as-built or models for this location, why do we need to pay for a survey? I'm going to show you an example about how a survey can save unanticipated costs and change orders a little bit later in the presentation. But another easy example that really doesn't need too much time is we recently just had a client where we completed a survey that had this same perspective. And when we completed the survey, after we convinced them that they needed it, we showed them that they were overpaying for their lease space because the square foot measurement was completely inaccurate and it was far smaller than what they thought they were paying for. And they were able to pivot to a new location before the lease agreement was signed without spending an additional dollar developing, the site, refreshing walls, putting in new equipment, et cetera, and then discovering that down the road. Tommy talked about capital. It's too expensive. We don't have it in our budget this year. Obviously, there's opportunity cost with every dollar, especially with the current cost of debt in our economy. But spending capital upfront to minimize delays, change orders, and impacts to operations should be considered when making these decisions. And obviously, there are other instances or misconceptions about surveying that I didn't list here and that everyone's probably ran into, or that you as a customer or client might have your own opinion on that based on your experiences. So if there was any I missed that you want to throw in there, I'd be happy to answer them if they come through the question and answers, and I will work them into our presentation going forward as I continue the webinar. Next, I'm going to talk about how to leverage field data to tackle important decisions for your program. We here at Sevan separate surveys or the types of data that come into the surveys into 3 different buckets that provide the data that is collected, informed upon, and used for data-based decision-making in the project lifecycle. All 3 of these buckets can be weighted equally, or they can be level loaded in weight depending on the use case and where you are in the timeline of your project or the portion of the asset lifecycle. So the first bucket is your visual data bucket. Most commonly used here are the virtual tours and 360 photos that are pretty commonplace now in service offerings. It used to be just still photos or drawings, hand drawings or sketches that are on site to give the design team an idea of what they needed. And now more commonly, as technology is evolving, you could include virtual or augmented reality into this bucket as well. Basically, it's a way of bucketing all the data to show the design team who's remote, or the client who's remote, or your operations facility maintenance team who's remote, what's on site, what the condition assessor is seeing in that moment, in that snapshot of time. The second one is the spatial data bucket. For us, this is typically where we put in point clouds and existing conditions drawings. Those are the primary portions of data that are in this bucket. The data can be very general, it can be accurate, or it can be extremely precise, depending on the use case and what you're using the data for. And I'll show you some examples here in the follow-on slides of what I'm talking about. And then finally, we have the descriptive data bucket that is typically the condition assessment report itself, or a quality condition assessment. And in my opinion, this is the most important bucket where the metal really meets the road and you can really make the most decisions. It allows for the blending of objective and subjective analysis methods on site, provides actual data in the short term for short-term and long-term initiatives. And as Tommy said, well, paraphrasing what Tommy said, it really is an art and a science on blending the objective and the subjective measurements or data gathered on site to arm you and your team with what they need to be successful and maximize value for the asset and maximize value for your customers. All three buckets can be used in any combination to paint a comprehensive picture at a specific point in time. And again, they can be weighted as needed depending on the use case and the time context within the project or the asset lifecycle itself. This slide here shows some services, means, and methods that are commonplace within the survey or reality capture arena. The ones that are in the green boxes there, point clouds, BIM, as-built or existing conditions drawings, interactive 360 virtual reality, or facility side equipment assessments. Those are really the ones that Sevan provides commonly, or some variant of those, to almost all of our clients. Those 20% of our services there represent about 80% of the data that we gather. And then the remaining services that are listed on here fill in the gaps for that 20%, depending on the use case, depending on the client, whether it's a QSR, retail, a petrol station, et cetera. And they fill the gap to give you that comprehensive picture of what your asset looks like and what you need to do with it as you go forward with your capital planning. And I'm going to show you an example of these three buckets and how they all relate to each other. So this right here is obviously a QSR. It's not retail, but for the purposes of what we're talking about, it's easily to demonstrate how this applies to a retail location as well. This is a 360 photo of a Starbucks location. It's not a drawing, it's not a rendering. This is actually a 360 photo. And what's great about these is, we have cameras that sit on tripods that we can station all around the exterior of the site, on top of the roof, and all through the interior of the store, that all link together to let you walk through and give you a comprehensive picture visually of what is there on site. And what's great about them is they're portable. The technology is getting cheaper, it's getting faster, and it's getting better. And it's almost exactly like if you've ever shopped on Redfin or Zillow for a home and seen the virtual walkthroughs of the homes. It's the same type of idea there. It takes a 360-degree photo on all three axes of everything that the camera can see at that point. And you can see that it's somewhat time-lapse because that car there that's in the drive-through is kind of blurry. That's because as the camera was scanning and taking the photo, the car started moving forward after they got their latte or Americano or whatever it was. And so it gathered the actual movement of that car in the photo itself. What's great about this technology as well is the camera stitches it together on the back end as it's delivered to you. So when you get it as a client, you don't have to do any manipulation. It's not a list of links that you have to click to go through and look and see where you are in the store. It's very visually appealing and easy to walk through. Same thing as if you were a customer or a client walking through the front doors, the same way you navigate the 360 photos. What's coupled with that when you use LiDAR, which is what we primarily use for our surveys, is this spatial data that's collected with it. Now, this is the same scan that we saw on the slide before where there was a photo, but this is the point cloud representation of it. And if you're looking at it really closely, it almost looks like a photo because it shows all the different features. You can see leaves of trees on there. You can see divots in the concrete. You can see gradient inside the face of the brick or the veneer that's on the front of the store. And basically what this is billions and billions of points of light gathered from around the store that are then combined together to give you a 3D visual representation of the structure that collects all the data spatially to where you can take ultra precise measurements to do what you need to do with that data, whether it's in design or modifications, refreshes, whatever it might be. LiDAR uses trigonometry on all three axes to connect two scans together. And then as you add your third and fourth and every other subsequent scan, it continues to relate those scans together as more data is collected. So by the time you're done and you've scanned the entire building, you're plus or minus maybe 2 millimeters of error in any given direction. It is extremely precise. What's also cool about this technology is the scanner is capable of removing or disregarding moving objects such as the car or the shopping carts. So it's not going to get screwed up if a car is moving because it's just anchoring on the corner of that building or the Starbucks sign here in this case itself. And that's what it's using for spatial relation to give you an ultra precise spatial model of your asset. The difference between LiDAR in this case and then photogrammetry, which is what a Matterport or those high-end virtual tours use, is that photogrammetry relies on everything being static in the store throughout the duration of the scan, and it aligns those photos based on the perspective of those common objects. So if a shopping cart is in one location and then somebody bumps it and moves it 3 feet to the right, it will change the scan to account for that moving, and you're going to start getting cattywampus movement in your walls and corners, which is why, photogrammetry is great for a visual representation, but when you're using it for design, it's not reliable for the spatial bucket when you're doing your existing condition documentation, because the store moves and it creates an unreal store or an unreal asset that is not straight, it is not square, and it is not accurate or precise about what's represented on site. The other thing too is that these point clouds that you see right here are attached into the visual portion of the bucket and overlay. So in the platforms that you can use, your designers or your clients or your team can take measurements within the virtual tour itself, and you're actually measuring the distance between the points of light that make up that point cloud that are laying behind the visual portion of the data, so that you can get down to the 10th of a centimeter, or excuse me, the 10th of an inch, how high the veneer is on the front of that Starbucks, or how high those I-beams are off there on those cantilevers, or how wide that Starbucks sign is right there. So it is very comprehensive and very powerful. And then finally, what it turns into is an existing conditions drawing that can be either modeled as 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions, and can be put on essentially any platform or software that your team uses to do their job. A model is a typical floor plan, but it also, as Michael said, includes interior elevations, reflected ceiling plans, ADA measurements or drawings or diagrams, roof plan, site plan, as well as any MEP or operational systems that you need included in the model. And what's powerful here is then you can now start taking in that descriptive data, like the quality of finishes or the kinds of finishes, the material of the finish, and integrate it into the model. While you're on site, also in here, you can integrate little geotags and annotate in the model existing conditions data, like how many light bulbs are out, the condition of the parking lot, and marking any spaces where there's alligator cracking or any humps or changes in elevations. How many spaces are available in electrical panels, where the water shutoff valves are, where the water meter is, any other idea or any other data that you need to get an idea of what shape your asset is in, as well as critical operational features that your on-site operators or your facility management team needs to know before they go out on site. What's important to remember is that buildings are built with components, and each component has an expiration date. And our goal is to help you collect the data to maximize the value of each component before that expiration date arrives. By planning ahead and identifying what data is essential, we can help create a structured database and then fill it with data from all 3 of the visual, spatial, and descriptive buckets across all of your assets, so that you're making high value plans and decisions and initiatives for your company, and also bringing joy to your clients. I'm going to show a couple more real world scenarios here. If there's anyone in Cincinnati, you might recognize this as the Cincinnati Bengals football stadium. And what you can see there is a scan. It's a point cloud actually of the football stadium. So it's hundreds of times larger than a Starbucks or a retail location. And what you see here is a gradient of elevation on the field. So the objective of this data was to use spatial and descriptive data buckets to demonstrate the drainage quality and capabilities of the field, mostly to reduce maintenance and upkeep of the asset, while also ensuring consistency and quality of the asset for game day. So you want to protect, obviously, the owners of the field and the managers of the field want to protect the asset, as the field of play is very expensive to maintain and replace in the middle of the season, especially as games are happening once a week. But more importantly, it helps protect the product on the field, meaning the players and the game itself, as well as ownership's financial investment in the team. For anyone who might be a sports fan, or if you're not, you'll recall that one of the league's most prominent quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, tore his Achilles tendon 4 plays into the season this year at a New York Jets home game on a field that was extremely wet, like completely saturated with water, had poor drainage. Now, Jets fans are typically gluttons for punishment, so this might not affect them as much, and maybe their viewership or ticket sales did not go down drastically. But most fans don't want to spend expensive money on season tickets or single game tickets to go watch the second string perform because the top players or the star players that bring in the fans got injured because of a poor quality player. Taking it a bit outside of the field and looking at the stadium itself, as players travel around and go to different teams, they assess the quality of the condition, or the quality and the conditions of the facilities. And they make a lot of their decisions based on how much money is being put into the facilities and what their quality of life is going to be there. So if the stadium is run down, or the locker room conditions are poor, or the hot water never works after a game when they want to take a shower, a lot of players make their decisions one way or the other based on those subtle elements. Oh, that went too far. Based on those subtle elements. And again, if you can't bring in those high quality players, it's going to affect the quality of play on the field for that team, which directly impacts the owner's pocketbooks. So this is not a perfect metaphor for retail sites, but I think there are enough connection points here for us all to agree that it's important to know at all times the conditions of your assets from both the operations and maintenance perspective, also as well as your client's perspective. And then for one that's a bit more applicable, here's actually a retail site with that exact same information scanned by one of our field technicians that shows the drainage of the top of the roof of this particular retail location. You can see the parapets, you can see the sky glass that lets the natural light in on the entranceway, and you can see where all the HVAC locations are. You want to make sure in this case that the water is draining to the appropriate place for runoff and collection and can get it into the storm sewer system. And you also want to make sure there's not any divots where water's piling up against those HVAC units or those RTUs, and perhaps getting into the mechanical features of those RTUs and causing it to malfunction. So the field demonstration directly overlays here into the retail location, and the use case is pretty similar if you can swap out football players for RTUs. And then here's another example of the point cloud that I showed with Starbucks. This is the point cloud for the top of that roof, just to give you another example of what the point cloud looks like. Next, I'll talk about the benefit, some additional benefits of a survey and condition assessment. Again, the goal of any facility condition assessment, we want to lean on descriptive data with objective measurements while using visual and spatial data to support and confirm our decisions confirm the data that we're using to make high-power decisions. The goal is to know the quantities and the qualities of everything on site. How much of there is this? How little of that? What does this look like? What's the quality of that? Very importantly, is what we're collecting here, is this data important and urgent in regards to decision-making and how we're going to leverage our capital as it relates to site operations and the experience of your clients while they're in your store? How much revenue change is tied to the decisions you need to make, and what do you need to do to change on site to make your dollar go further and make that site go from a producer to a super producer. Arming yourself with comprehensive data across all of your assets allows you to make capital decisions to make your O&M more efficient while also maximizing the value and the joy brought to your clients while they're at your retail location. Generally, the more structured the data, the further you move from the subjective to the objective. And you'll have more confidence in your data and be able to better predict outcomes as you make decisions with refresh or renovation or new equipment installs on your site and how it's going to impact your bottom line. But one of the important things we all consider, and this is more of a facility condition assessment team, this is more important for us, but it also demonstrates our knowledge of the space and why it's important to trust experts for you. Is the value that we bring is understanding that the right equipment is used for the right use case, right? Reliability of equipment and reliability of the individual performing the assessment is paramount in making sure that you get the right data that's usable to make decisions. For the visual data bucket, The required training and experience is minimal. You can create virtual tours now from your iPhone with a free app on the App Store, and after watching a 10-minute YouTube video for best practices. You can buy a Matterport camera straight off of Amazon and be part of their network and out there scanning within a week. You know, Matterport, again, is one of the largest virtual tour providers, and they have an extensive network that has commoditized this specific bucket of the facility condition assessment. And they also have great products for the virtual tours. If that's what you need, it's just a high quality 360 tour for you to determine what you have on site visually. But when it comes to spatial and descriptive data buckets, it is essential that the equipment is reliable and used for the appropriate use case to remove that subjectivity and uncertainty. What you can see here in the top right of this very busy slide are the scanning error rates of commonly available equipment on the market. Outlined in the box on the right is the equipment that Sevan uses. And you can see that our LiDAR equipment has an error rate of 2 to 4 millimeters, depending on the piece of the equipment, over 10 meters. And it's able to scan a 45 millimeter, it's able to scan that within a 45 meter to a 130 meter radius, which is massive. And that's, it's longer than a football field in some cases. Conversely, the Matterport camera, it has 10 times that error over half the scan distance. It has improved with some of their newer cameras, but this camera is not yet commonplace, and it still has a 5 times error rate. It's 5 times as error prone over half of the scan distance. So you can imagine over a massive retail facility, the compounding errors in measurement over that floor plan when you have something that is, plus or minus 54 millimeters every 5 meters. It gets pretty extensive very quickly, and you don't have a lot of trust in your data. So if you only need to confirm quality and visual data of finishes and equipment, the Matterport Virtual Tour is a great option. I mean, our team uses this platform with many of our clients for this express purpose. But if you're removing a load-bearing wall or expanding your retail floor or changing out equipment with newer or more efficient equipment, you'll want to make sure that your measurements are precise. And as Michael said, this prevents costly change orders, permitting issues, and delays in schedule when you're refreshing your store. And most importantly, the longer you're delayed or the longer all this goes on, your customers and your clients are either unhappy or unwilling to be in your store. And all the efficiencies that you gain with new equipment or different movement patterns within the store are not gained as immediately if you don't have that data correct on the outset. So here's an example of what I was just talking about with one of our retail clients. They wanted us to go in and confirm the floor plans that they had on file from 2015 or 2016, something like that, were still accurate before they went and put in a bunch of new equipment to make their power usage go lower and make their operations more efficient. And so basically we went in an afternoon and scanned the entire building with the same scanners I talked about earlier and overlaid that point cloud. We cleaned it up to remove a lot of the noise, but we overlaid that point cloud right on top of the floor plan. And you can see here that the exterior elements of this existing conditions drawings that they had, coupled with our floor plan, or excuse me, our point cloud, very precise. You can look at that one round column up on the front, and it's like a perfect match. The angled walls on the outside, perfect match. But as you look around the store, you can see that the cashier's booths are slightly off. There's some permanent FF and E that is off by a foot or long by a foot, or it's offset by a foot in the X and Y axis. And then if you look down here in the lower center here, one of their angled counters is right on. It was very precise and very well done by the installation team. But the other side of the counter is offset, like the angle is wrong. It's also offset by 2 feet, which may not be a huge deal if you're just moving around some temporary features. But if you're spending a lot of money to get new equipment in and more efficient equipment in that has a long lead time, you want to make sure that you order the right model that's going to fit in the space that you need. So you don't have to do costly change orders and drill into the ground and extend drain pipes or extend power features. And you also want to make sure that it fits within the structure itself and doesn't compound movement for your clients as they move through the retail location to use your products. So this was a very quick example to show how you can use the spatial data element by itself just to confirm what you have on file is actually real. Tommy said we were going to talk about current technology and data trends. There's a lot on these next 3 slides, so I'll just click through them as I'm talking, and you can kind of read them here. It's a lot of data from surveys for design teams, construction teams, and AEC firms as it relates to the common development environment and BIM. But basically, technology, the end state of this is technology and BIM in facility management. The technology in those areas is improving drastically, almost on a daily basis. And in most cases, it's actually improving operations. It's not a swing and a miss with new technology. And what sets companies apart currently is their ability to gather data and implement new technologies at the appropriate portion of that technology adoption curve. And so, 20 years ago, what used to be considered excessive or unnecessary in BIM in the common development environment is consistently becoming more commonplace, and also essential and critical if you want to stay competitive with your near peers or other competitors. Leaving behind those that are resistant to new methods and technologies, whether you're on the design side or the operations side. It's not essential to be an innovator or early adopter. You don't need to be the first in the queue to get the first iPhone when it comes out at the Apple Store. It's not about that. Those people only represent about 15% of users that are excited to have something new and accelerate into operations. But they won't know much later on whether there was actually value creating impact, or if that product even has true market fit, or if it's going to be completely obsolete in the next decade. They're just excited to have the technology, and they always want to have the new technology. But once that product has crossed the chasm in that adoption curve, and it's pretty clear that it's going to achieve product market fit, you'll want to be in that early majority that takes advantage of those technologies and services and integrate them into your capital planning process or operations process as soon as possible. The longer you wait to adopt, the less time you'll have to enjoy the efficiencies to be gained by this technology, both as it comes to operations and facility maintenance and planning, but it's also going to limit the amount of time you get to enjoy the value that you create for your clients by implementing this technology up front and ensuring they get the most enjoyable experience from the offset. So next, I'm going to show you some examples of some new technologies. The first one I have here is a video that I'm going to play and let you sit back and enjoy from one of our partners.
Hi there, my name is Ross Goldenberg, and I'm co-founder of a company called Agentic. Agentic is a platform that uses AI to make business intelligence as easy as asking English language questions like you would to a human analyst. If you've ever used, say, ChatGPT, what you're about to see may look familiar, but Agentic's platform is able to draw together knowledge from across your organization, including your team's documents, your emails, spreadsheets, and even connect to your corporate systems, such as your accounting or your facilities management system, all in a secure environment. We've been working with Sevan to provide insights into the information captured in site surveys. In the example I'll show you, we've uploaded survey information that Sevan recently captured on equipment for a national retailer. Our AI has also cross-referenced that survey data with work orders and service records stored in the retailer's FM system. So let me share my screen, and we'll start by asking Agentic a simple question. And that question is, can you provide a table counting how many RTUs, or rooftop heating and cooling units, we have broken down by manufacturer? In this case, Agentic is searching the information contained in the surveys. It's semantically understanding what I'm asking and also what was surveyed to give me an answer. Let's get a little deeper here. Let's ask about warranties on those RTUs. So I'm going to ask if it can provide a table counting how many RTUs have warranties that expire in 2024 and break that down by state and site number. So you can see here, Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, etc. And this simple line of questioning might prove extremely valuable in, for instance, making sure that we schedule inspections or service to address any pending issues before those warranties expire. Let me give you one more example. This time, let's mix the survey data with the data stored in our FM system. So I'm going to ask Agentic, can you give me a list of RTUs that were damaged by hail since 2020? And let's break that down by state, site number, and warranty status. And there we go. Historically, as you can imagine, performing analyses like this means working with an analyst or programmer to source and then organize and analyze the data. It's a long process. Agentic's AI model, on the other hand, can automatically understand and interpret the relationship between different pieces of information spread across your organization and your systems. As you can see, I'm just scratching the surface of what can be done with our AI platform. Part of the magic here is how easy it is to unlock the power of all the information Sevan may help you collect in site surveys, transforming it from a snapshot used for a particular program to a long-term source of knowledge that can be used not only to analyze the past, but see around corners into the future. So if you're interested in chatting more and learning about what Agentic can do, reach out to the folks at Sevan and they'll connect us. Thanks for your time.
One thing I want to add to Ross's comments before I move on, just about the capabilities of AIs to assist in data comprehension, is that it's changed so much in just the last 2 years. Forget about the last decade. It used to be that you had to have, like, before you did any initiative with facility conditions assessments, like a nearly perfectly planned, completely structured database and knew exactly what you needed to go in there. And a team of data analysts who are fluent in SQL or some of the other languages for those structured databases to aggregate the data, organize the data, clean the data, interpret the data, and then action the data. And like, unless you had those things, you just had a jumbled mess of data that you may or may not have known what to do with, or by the time you figured out what you wanted to do with it, the opportunity had passed or was waning at least. And now with these new movements like ChatGPT or the AI that Ross just demonstrated, which is very similar to ChatGPT, you just need to be able to have like some critical thinking and ask some clear questions. You don't need to have a perfectly structured database at the outset of your program. It can be flexible and it can be unstructured and it can be different formats as you combine it all for it to gather that data and give you back what you're looking for, so long as you collect the data in the first place. So like the democratization of data for operators, AEC firms, facility conditions teams such as ours, and retail owners is really making this powerful. And we're hoping that, people across the industry or players in this space, regardless of where you sit with the asset, are starting to embrace it and integrate it to make better decisions. Here's some hardware technology I wanted to talk about. One of the things that's become the most common and that I'm very bullish on is the use of unmanned aerial systems or drones in the data gathering for reality capture. There's a quote which I'm going to butcher, but Isaac Asimov said something to the effect of that today's science fiction is tomorrow's science fact. And I think the prevalence of drones in our just everyday use is example of this, or is evidence of this. It seemed like 10 years ago, drones were something the government had. But now you can go to Best Buy or Amazon with a credit card, and as long as you can get a personal license or a commercial license, you can buy a drone and have it flying in the same day. Like, the technology is completely commoditized and it's available for everyone. And what's cool about these newer drones, as obviously as the technology gets better, is that the chassis for the drones or the UAS can be mounted with all types of equipment. And like in our industry, it would be, LiDAR is a big example and one of the most common ones. And it doesn't just have to be the flying drones. It can be, I think Boston Systems has like a walking dog drone called Spot that you can slap a LiDAR right on the head and accomplish the same thing. So some of the common use cases that I've seen are for like bridge and infrastructure or exterior building inspections, all of which used to be expensive and time consuming and unsafe because you had to put people up very high in the air or underneath a bridge over water. And the data was very inaccessible, and it took a long time to get that data. And now you can quickly and safely get that data with high fidelity virtual and spatial data with the use of these drones. Inspecting exterior elements of skyscrapers in New York City or Dubai or whatever it might be can be done very easily with these drones and the appropriate equipment mounted to the chassis. I've seen people use drones to scan, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of gas and oil fields to get their site data and turn it into a digital model that would have taken months to do by hand, 10 years ago. Scientists use drones to monitor deforestation, which is pretty cool. My favorite use case, the Army Corps of Engineers uses these drones with LiDAR mounted on the chassis to monitor and inspect crack formations on the faces of their massive dams, especially over on the West Coast. So what used to take a person rappelling and hand documenting the length of cracks and whatnot on a massive dam, you can now put a drone up there and do a flight path in under an hour using that LiDAR technology we talked about that we can use in a QSR or your retail store. And because it's accurate down to plus or minus 2 millimeters, they can once a month go up there and scan the face of a dam and monitor crack, increase in width, or monitor crack length as it grows, and know where their important and urgent focus needs to be on the repair and maintenance of that dam, which is it's really impressive. And then more commonly in the news, if you follow in the news, they always have some story of scientists finding some lost civilization in the footprints or the jungles of the Amazon using LiDAR technology and finding the footprints of the building. The Titanic, not the submersible incident, but right before that happened, scientists used underwater UASs or drones to create a LiDAR scan and point cloud of the Titanic at the bottom, which stitched together 70,000 different scans and created an accurate representation of what was underneath the water. So all kinds of things you can do with drones. Augmented reality and virtual reality, bottom line, great way to put people in a room and see what's on site using one person. You don't need to send tons of people to the site to go look at the same thing. You can put on AR and VR. You can integrate future elements with current elements in the existing conditions drawings, and you can do it from a conference room. You can do it from remote, like we're all right now. You can do it anywhere, and it really helps lower safety in dangerous situations, operations of heavy machinery, putting people in danger unnecessarily while giving you a realistic view of your assets. And then finally, another thing I'm bullish on is the use of digital twins, digital factories, and smart buildings. Not only are you getting the visual and spatial and descriptive elements for redesign elements or refresh elements, but companies like Volvo and BMW are integrating data from their machines or their manufacturing lines and other aspects of the Internet of Things to make their digital factories a one-stop shop operational element where a facility operator can operate the factory from anywhere in the world. And it's not just a representation of the walls and windows and equipment. It's talking about riveting machines and production rates and any other data that you want to flow through to connect there. So it truly turns a digital aspect of just structure itself into a fully operational mechanism that allows people to operate it from anywhere in the world, which is what a lot of people are starting to embrace, or a lot of clients are starting to embrace and operate. So next, I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
All right. Thanks, Damien. So we have a couple of case studies of some real life examples here to review with the group. The first one here is Carbon Health. So in this instance of this program, Carbon Health was looking to expand their portfolio across the country, and they engaged our team to help assess all of their properties, organize the data, and present that to their real estate team to empower them to make some decisions about their portfolio and how they wanted to prioritize their facilities. Our team was out on site doing surveys using a compact laser scanner. So this has two very good benefits, both for our team and for the client. One, it reduces the amount of time on site, so we're able to get in and out as quick as possible. That helps keep the costs down. It also helps minimize operational impacts. Obviously, there's no client or business that wants to shut down or disrupt operations or interfere with customers. So the ability to get in and out and collect the data that we need quickly and accurately is very, very important. We took that data and then turned it around and used it to build 3D Revit models. This was provided to the Carbon Health's MEP engineers that helped them understand what available space and parameters they had to design around the facilities and the updates and the refreshes that they were looking to do. This was coupled with as-built drawings and, like I said, empowered their engineers to make the best decisions possible for their team, for their portfolio, and ultimately for them as a client. The surveys were turned around in 2 to 3 weeks after they were ordered, so it was a very quick timeline. The next example here is Chase Bank. So we did some surveys for them for ADA compliance. And what we did with Chase is we went out and we used a laser CAD to create 3D or 360-degree panoramic photo documentation coupled with as-built drawings, which enabled the Chase design team to review all of the sites remotely. So they did not have to travel out to the locations, and they had everything they needed to review in an office to make some decisions. They were able to, with this information, make some decisions very quick, move very fast along their project timeline, and it also gave them the ability to prioritize their site on which locations were of higher need than others in order to get into compliance. And then finally, here we have a Walgreens example. They acquired Rite Aid several years ago, and there were 1,900 locations that needed to be assessed in order to determine which of those locations were going to be integrated into the Walgreens portfolio, and then other locations that would ultimately be closed. We used 360-degree virtual tours to document everything, and this helped inform and empower their real estate team to make some decisions about those locations and what actions they were going to take. This was a much bigger, longer program, so this took a couple of years to get through all of those 1,900. But Walgreens was provided with a standardized deliverable and a report that enabled them to get into all of the stores, look at the facilities and the fixtures, and help them make decisions on what needed to happen at each one of those particular locations. Next, I'm going to hand it back to Tommy.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. As we wrap up here today, our goal today was to explain the power of data-driven surveys and assessments, and how that cutting-edge information can drive better planning and execution for your next initiative. As an extension of your team, we've been listening for over a decade, and to that end have built one of the largest and most experienced survey teams in the country. Along with that, we have provided them with state-of-the-art tools and state-of-the-art training that help provide these leading-edge outputs that have been discussed by Damen and Michael. Your business is building your brand, managing change, holding or reducing the budgets, compressing schedules to create revenue on a much more rapid pace. Our business is actually to help you make that job easier. Stealing a line from Redditor, Sevan, around the world, around the clock, we are your eyes and your ears 24/7. As a veteran-owned business, we can help contribute to any diverse spend initiatives you might be working on and working towards. This same leadership team drives our commitment to the pillars of our company: safety, sustainability, diversity. We are proud to have been recognized as one of the great places to work year after year, and one of the fastest growing private businesses the past 4 years. You only have 2 hands. Think what you can do with Sevan. We appreciate your time today. We appreciate the hard work of our team to put this insight together. We look forward to speaking to you in the future. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Tommy. Well, that's about all we have time for. And remember, if you asked a question that we didn't answer, you can expect a follow-up from our speaker. Once again, thanks to today's participants for sharing their expertise with us. And thanks to Sevan Multi-Site Solutions for sponsoring the webinar. And also, I want to thank all of our attendees for devoting time to be with us today. One last thing, keep in mind that this webinar will shortly be available on demand. You can listen to it again if there are things you want to check back on, and you can also share it with your colleagues. I think that's about it. Have a great day, everyone.